Okay, guys, sorry. I'm going to apologize now for the noise. I have some construction going out behind my room here today, and so hopefully it's not going to be that noisy. Anyways, just wanted to give you an overview of this week. Last week, in our discussions, we did a lot of stuff with water use and how much water you use. I do this because this is, I think, probably the most. It helps you connect with some of the things that we're talking about. We get our water from rivers. We get our water from groundwater. We talked about the physical process of how streams and groundwater work last time. But I also wanted to, in our discussions, figure out or connect you a little bit on how you use or drink water and things like that. So last week we talked about how you use your water. A lot of you guys didn't realize how much water you use, and especially in what we call indirect ways. We have what we call direct water use and indirect water use. Indirect water use is water being used on your behalf. A great example of that is through power generation. For every kilowatt of hour you use, the power plant has to actually cool the plant, and therefore uses quite a bit of water for every kilowatt hour you use. And an average person uses about 34 kilowatts a day, so it's about 27 gallons just per day, just for your power. Other indirect uses, if you go out to eat, they're cooking for you, they're washing dishes for you, all that kind of stuff that goes on there is part for your benefit as you are a customer there. Another part of that is where you go get your clothes to produce your clothes. We didn't do any of this in our uses, but to produce your clothes, it often costs a lot of money to do that. And the food that is generated, the irrigation that is used for specific foods. For example, for a 4-ounce patty of beef, you typically use about 400 gallons of water just for that, because the raising of cattle is very water intensive, and the production of the meat afterwards is water intensive. So those are just some examples, right? We use a lot of indirect water that most people don't even realize that you do. Now, this week we're going to kind of continue on a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about streams and mostly flooding this week, if you haven't finished your lectures from last week, and then focusing on groundwater. But I'm also going to be discussing about where the water quality that we have. And here in the eastern United States, we have more issues with water quality than we do with water quantity. Water quantity is more of a western United States issue, where I grew up. But here in the eastern United States, we're usually more so worried about the quality of our water. So we're going to talk about that in our discussion page a little bit today, this time. So let me go through the module this week. First of all, the overview is fairly simple. It's the same as pretty much as last week. The objectives are the same as well, except instead we're focusing on Chapter 13 objectives this time. The readings are fairly much the same as well. We're just focusing on the latter half of streams and the groundwater section of Chapter 13 is what we're focusing on. Okay. We're doing both sections, but we're focusing on this section mostly. Our lectures, we are also, once again, I didn't expect you to go through them all last week. If you did, you're ahead of the game. But review those, and those latter half is what we'll be focusing on there. I'm going to skip the discussions for a second and go to the assignments. So we do have Chapter 13 activities here. So one is going to be on surface water, one is going to be on groundwater. A couple of people have had some issues with some of the surface water one. It's just that their math is a little, are having issues with some of their math. So go back and look at that, and I'll give you a hint on some of those ones that you do math. There's hints up in the corner. Pick those hints. That will usually help you in your discussions there. Now, for the discussion this week, I'm going to ask you to learn about where you get your water from, and more or less, we'll talk about water quality in regards to your drinking water. And some people are worried about their drinking water of tap water. Tap water is actually, usually cleaner than other sources, because they are underneath very stringent water quality issues for if you get your water from a public water source. Okay, so for example, here in Robinson County, a lot of the people here get their water from the Robinson County water system. in that it's a series of groundwater wells that if you were a private well owner, you would just pump that water up and drink it, not do anything else with it. But the county actually has more stringent laws than that, so they actually have to go through, do some filtering, take iron out of it, add some fluoride, do other things like that to actually, and also a little bit of chlorine to be able to clean the water a little bit before they even deliver it to you, right? And so there are some cases where that's the case. And groundwater also, because the water as it seeps through the ground gets filtered out, tends to be cleaner than most surface water sources. And so when you get groundwater, it's usually fairly good. Now this is something that some people don't realize, but bottled water, it doesn't necessarily have to go underneath the same stringent guidelines as most of your public water sources. They go through certain guidelines by the FDA, but those FDA guidelines are not actually as stringent as public water source guidelines. So if you get your water from a well like I do, I even have some issues with my water a little bit. I have a little bit of lead in my water, and so we actually put a reverse osmosis in our house to actually be able to take out that lead and some of the heavier metals that could be associated with that. Most groundwater should be fine, but you never know. Some individuals also think bottled water is better, and so they drink bottled water almost exclusively. Now, if you were to just drink bottled water, it's actually fairly expensive. Say the cost of bottled water is about 2,000 times the cost of that same amount of water if you got it from the tap. That same amount of water given from the tap is like 4/10 of a penny per 16 ounces. It's like ridiculously low. Whereas that same 16-ounce bottle, you could be paying anywhere up from up to about 25 cents if you buy it in bulk, like some people do, or you can all the way up to $4 a bottle if you get some of the fancier ones, right? Like Fuji and Evian and some of those guys, which are waste and actually not very sustainable. But that's okay. So you're paying 2,000 times more than you would with the water that you have, and it doesn't necessarily is a better product sometimes. Some people say that the taste is different, but it's true, but lots of times the taste is taken out of it because of that. So if you're an average American and just got your water from bottled water, you could be spending anywhere from $300 if you get the cheaper brands, up to about $1,200 or even more if you get some of the more expensive brands of water per year. That's extra over top of your other water bills. That's a lot of money that you're wasting. But not only that, you're actually polluting the planet quite significantly, because plastic bottles are one of the main sources of waste in a lot of our landfills. It's about, if you take it into accordance, it's not as much as some things, but it's pretty high in relationship to most products. And last of all, just to actually form that bottle and actually to bottle that bottle, it takes up to about 3 gallons each time, because they're cleaning. They get the bottle, they make the bottle, they clean the bottle before they even put water in it. So it's crazy how much water they use. About 3 gallons per container. Okay, of one 16-ounce container, they use about 3 gallons of water for that. So you're wasting a lot of water too if you do bottled water over just tap water. And so depending on where you are on the debate, it's something that you need to understand. So the assignment this week is actually fairly straightforward. What I want you to do is I want you to either watch a video or two, read some documentation, or actually do some research on some local topics or the bigger topic of bottled water. Okay, so you just have to do one of these. You don't have to do all, just do one. You could either read this excerpt. This is a chapter from a book called The Big Thirst. It's a pretty good book about water use and where we get our water. This was actually talking about titled Message in the Bottle. That's the chapter title. It's a great, and it will help you understand the pros and cons of bottled water versus tap water. So if you want to do that one, you can read that one. The next one here is The Story of Stuff. It's probably a little shorter. It's only about, I think, 10 minutes long. But it's a video talking about, Story of Stuff is an advocacy group who actually talks about our materials that we buy and how we can actually more sustainably reduce the amount of materials we buy. And in this case, they're talking about bottled water in general, because it's pretty invasive in a not very sustainable manner. So please, if you want to do that one, watch that and then write your essay about that one. The other two that you can do is you can talk about more a local issue where there's a Gen X spill near Holt Mills, North Carolina. This is a carcinogen, and it's actually was spilled in Cape Fear, in that region, and actually leaked down into our aquifers around that region. And so there's people in that area who have actually had to go to bottled water because their tap water is contaminated. Because they're getting water out of their wells, not the local water source. Last of all, you can do that one if you're interested in it, or the last one, and there's a website here that you can go to, and it will tell you about, here, let me go to the website real quick. It will just tell you about Gen X and the investigation that they're having. This is North Carolina's DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, and talking about that one there. The last one is coal ash. Coal ash is a material that we actually is left over from the waste of burning coal, and we do have coal plants here in North Carolina, and some of them are being torn down and replaced with natural gas plants, which are much cleaner. However, those old sites still have coal ash next to the riverbeds because they put them near rivers because you need water for the cooling process. And so if that ash fails, like it did in the Dan River back in 2014, a lot of heavy metals and other sulfur and other things like that will get into the water supply and therefore cause contamination into our water supply. That happened back in 2014 up the Dan River, and it could happen all over the state. For example, there's a pile there in Lumberton that actually has not been cleaned up yet. There's piles in Wilmington that haven't been cleaned up yet. And are sources of potential contamination. So if you want to study that one instead, you can go to the DEQ's website here and investigate here. Here's the, oh, that's the wrong one. I clicked on the wrong site here. Okay. So this is the introduction to your coal ash. And so you can go there and get the introduction. You can learn about just the Dan River itself, the process, what happened there. But basically, it's just getting you to investigate some of your local issues or talk about the water bottle issue. So that's what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to write a basically 200 to 250 word essay in length talking about the issues. Make sure you don't just copy paste things. That's considered plagiarism. You need to actually put things in your own words and not have any fluff in there. Make it as concise as you possibly can. I will put these through a plagiarism program. When I do these kind of essays, I make sure I do, partly because I want you guys to learn how to concisely figure out how to word things yourself in your own words. And a lot of you guys have problems with that actually. And so that's a thing you should learn for your career in a sense, because you can get in trouble if you do start plagiarizing things like that. Even the idea itself can be considered plagiarism. So if you don't cite it at all, but it's still the idea, and you just typed it, you just change the words around and stuff like that, that's still considered plagiarism. So you need to make sure you cite it. You need to make sure if you actually use some other materials, and you also need to change it enough that wouldn't be considered plagiarism. And that's a fine line sometimes of what that is, but it needs to be basically, if the concepts are just change a word here or change a word there, that's still plagiarism. You have to actually, whereas if you have multiple different sentences and you're concisely summarizing it into one, that's not. It's a little bit different, but you still need to cite it. Anyways, if you have any questions, let me know. I mean, that's good enough for today. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.